how do we help our systems navigate either what we're currently doing, but do that in a different way, in a more effective way, or adapt to a very changing and uncertain environment, or probably a bit of all of that in between. How do I take something back? And I think the premise to start from, and knowing that you may have covered some of this before, is this whole territory that we're in and going into is actually trying to nudge our systems and ourselves out of our comfort zone, which in itself is a really, really difficult task. And the main reason for that is human systems. 80% of what we do as human beings every day is exactly the same. So it's quite sobering that. When I first heard that statistic, I was thinking, I'm sure that I'm really spontaneous and do different things every day. And it's nonsense. We're actually incredibly programmed for order, for repetition, to know actually what's going to happen. So we will always pull back to what we know and where we feel most comfortable. And in this space, it's doing stuff that we know how to do, where we're doing it with other people who can do it in the way that we know as well. Most of us spend most of our time here. 88% of people operate every day in their comfort zone, showing up, doing work that they're skilled and they know how to do. And they might have to kind of grapple with some complicated challenge, but really we're not changing anything. But what we're looking at here is trying to not just take ourselves, but our systems into more of a zone where we're learning. We're learning into what's the best approach, because we don't know. So it's all a learning exercise. And when we're going in there, whilst it might feel, it can be exciting, it can be exhilarating, because we're doing stuff we haven't done before. And we know there's opportunity, and there's a promise of something better. Our system will keep pulling us back. So there's a phrase that I heard a few years ago that I've just stolen ruthlessly, is that systems are ruthless recruiters of the status quo. Yeah? I'm going to say it again because it sticks. Systems are ruthless recruiters of status quo. So if we know that we are trying to shift a system which has been set up to do what it is currently doing, it's very hard to shift that. Actually, our systems aren't broken or not working. They are working and doing exactly what they were set up to do. So, we can intellectually think that, but when we get our heads around, the system is doing, it's got norms, it's got structures, it's got cultures, it's got behaviors, because 10, 20 years ago, whenever it was set up to get a particular outcome in that way. And the way that we set it up worked then. But usually what happens is the environment around us is changing, either externally or internally, and systems are very slow to shift. So knowing that actually, the system is doing what it's set up to do, if I'm trying to change that system, then this is the territory we're in. People are going to keep pulling back to what they know. So that helps us then navigate. Where do we then focus our attention, knowing that we're actually not just asking other people, but ourselves to potentially change, not technical things, but usually beliefs, behaviors, values, relationships, the more adaptive stuff that we'll be going into. And that's the hardest thing, because we'll keep pulling back, because this is what we know and where we feel comfortable. So just wanted to frame the whole adaptive work in this. This is the work that we're doing. We're trying to really grow this comfort zone so that the learning zone, our comfort zone gets larger and larger out here, where we're getting much more comfortable with doing things we haven't done, with trying things, with experimenting, rather than our comfort zone being pretty much only in what we know how to do. So the only anchor that we can have around that is really understanding, so why are we here? Yeah, what's our purpose and what we're trying to do? Not what do we do or how do we do it, but actually that why. And so we're going to spend a bit of time exploring that, because really that's the only anchor we've got. As soon as we start to engage with our systems, we're going to hear and have radically different views about what we should do differently or how we should do it. But if we can be centered on the why, it's really the only anchor that we can have to hold us through. It's really hard to get systems to change and adapt. So unless we are really clear ourselves on our why, about what's going to get us up in the morning to keep on doing it, but also to try and hold other people in that question, really that's all that matters. Because we get really seduced and diverted into running programs, doing what we know how to do, which we've got expertise to do. And it may be doing absolutely nothing in helping us achieve our purpose. But you know, we hear it all the time, we get purpose creep. You know, we respond to the changing funding environments, we respond to the forces that are around us, and we often lose sight of this. So the purpose is really our anchor. And we're only spending, you know, an hour on it today, but this is really the central question that I would encourage you to keep coming back to, that, you know, and if it wasn't clear for you, that's fine, to sit with that question, to engage people with the question of why are we here? Because what we're trying to do in leadership is work on multiple levels. So we've got our, get a pen that works. So we're looking at taking systems through, first of all, understanding what's our purpose in the world? What's the broader impact we're trying to have? You know, what would it look like if it was a fairer world, if we were advancing it? That we've got to bring that to life for our organizations and systems. And then we need to look at, so what does that look like in our organization? What's the purpose of our organization? And then we've got ourself in there. So what's my own purpose? Why am I here? And then at any given time in the moment, to be able to be clear on what's my purpose right now? Do I know kind of why I'm responding in the way I am, or am I just being buffered by everything that's going on, or am I reacting from a default? So the art here is to be able to start to have that thought process going on for ourselves, but bring others along in that. So at any one time, we can make sure we're on track. We might not know how to do it or what to do, but we've got our why. We know why we're doing it. Often what we find, you know, in collaborations, the work we've done is that we might start off with a group of people, we're really clear on purpose. 6 months later, 10 months later, the environment's changed. Actually, we're not aligned anymore. We thought we were, but the environment shifted. Yeah, and we've got slightly different reasons why we're all showing up. But we very rarely check in on it. You know, we're still here for the same reason. And if we're not, that's okay. But how do we align? How do we shift? You know, a lot of the collective impact and collaborative work that we're doing, it can take 18 months, 2 years to bring a group of people who are all coming together because they've got a stake in that issue and they want to get system change. But to actually come to the table on, there's enough of a drive that they want to do something about, you know, they want to create a fairer world. That might be all you've got. That might be as good as it gets initially to convene people, to have a different conversation. But then to just expect to actually create a shared purpose takes a long time, because we're constantly testing. Actually, we thought we were aligned, but clearly, because we're going in different directions, maybe we're not. Or maybe there's multiple ways, to come to your point, that we can actually realize that purpose, but we're only going to find out by testing it. Yeah, about what's the best way to bring this about, because we don't know. So just creating a space to have that question, to keep anchoring people back, is often the work, and we're testing it as we go. We've got to think about how do we tap into the why.